Now, an advert on the London Tube featuring an artisan cheesemaker has been banned on the grounds that cheese is too unhealthy.
It's crazy, isn't it? Transport for London said that it made the decision based on the Food Standard Agency's model of fat, sugar and salt being bad.
But many are pointing out that alcohol, ultra-processed foods and fizzy drinks can be advertised on the tube, so what's wrong with cheese, which is at least natural?
Well, yeah, and cheese is lovely. But is it unhealthy? To debate this, we're pleased to be joined by the banned man in question, founder of Cheese Geek, Edward Hancock, who says that cheese is a key part of our diet.
And social commentator Bushra Shaikh, who says she's all in favour of reducing adverts that promote fatty foods, and TFL have done the right thing. Good to see you both this morning. Bushra, I mean, cheese is a staple of our diet, and yes, we know it's got fat in it, but it is a natural product. We shouldn't be banning that, should we?
It's not the case of banning a product. I guess this is a movement generally within the UK that we need to have, which is about endorsing and advertising healthy eating. It's very clear by the obesity stats that we currently have in the UK that people actually don't know a lot about foods, the consumption, how much they should be eating. So, I mean, certainly for me, I think TFL have done the right thing here. And some might argue the consistency, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I was going to say, we do have an obesity crisis in this country. It's probably not down to cheese. No. Let's be honest. It's probably down to sugary drinks and burgers and things, all of which can be advertised on the tube.
I mean, look, it's not just one thing. We can't isolate one thing. At the end of the day, we know that cheese is something, it's good for you, in smaller quantities, protein and calcium. But at the same time, cheeses also are linked to cardiovascular disease if you have too much of it. And people always don't know how much to eat. We have 25.9% of people in this country, adults, who are obese, and a further 34% of them who are overweight. Those are a huge number that we have to combat. So although, like I said, we can argue TFL's consistency, but this is a good start. If we start stopping it from cheeses, perhaps TFL will then follow suit and do the high sugar and include alcohol in that as well. But we've got to start somewhere.
Edward, what's your feeling? Have TFL been reasonable here?
Well, I mean, I think the most important thing is to stick to the science. And we've got two parallel strands going on here. We've got the real world, where we've had the largest clinical study that's ever been carried out by Professor of epidemiology at King's College, that's Tim Spector, and Sarah Berry. And this study over many years has shown quite categorically that artisan cheese, particularly raw milk cheese, but artisan cheese that has lots of microbes within it, is incredibly important for our body, for our gut, for our microbiome, and it leads to reduced cardiovascular. So this is like the massive misconception, which has just come up there, which is that cheese is high fat, so it leads to cardiovascular disease. The opposite. It's actually the opposite. We've now clinically proven that. So we've got the real world and real modern medicine and nutrition, and then we've got the archaic kind of dinosaurs over the other side who are just trying to simplify things and say, well, the public don't really understand anything, so we're just going to make it really, really simple for them. High fat, high sugar, high salt ban. And it doesn't make any sense. We just need to get with the times. I mean, this is all publicly available. These studies are publicly available. They're everywhere. We can see them. So it is very frustrating that we're having this conversation about artisan cheese being bad for you when it's actually not. It's like I said, it's now proven to be nutritionally an incredibly important part of our diet. It lowers diabetes, type 2 diabetes, better cardiovascular, lowers cardiovascular disease. Doesn't create high cholesterol. It improves lower instances of cancer, specifically colon cancer. The list goes on. And this was on my original post I put on LinkedIn. But yeah, it's a misguided, misdirected policy that TFL are following. And that, I think, for me, is what the most frustrating thing is.
I mean, look, Bushra, I mean, you can argue between the two of you who's right and who's wrong in terms of the benefits of or the problems with cheese. But the bottom line here is we don't need TFL to tell us what we can and can't eat, do we?
Well, clearly, obviously, we do.
What do you mean? Forgive me, but why clearly that we do? Because it's not clear at all, is it? We're allowed to make our own decisions.
Such a large chunk. Sorry, Stephen. But it's because we've got a large chunk of people, and you know what I'd like to say to Edward is that whether you want to follow the science, we know that eating too much of cheese is bad for you. It's the amount that people are eating, and TFL has millions of people on it every single day that see these advertising campaigns. So they are the target audience. So we have to be careful about what we're putting in front of people, because we know that there is an obesity and an overweight problem in this country. There are several other platforms that you can go to and say that I want to advertise my cheese, but TFL is a public place where there are millions of people going every single day, and that is the audience.
Yeah, but the last time I got on the tube, I don't do it very often because I don't live in London, but I was stood on the platform and all there was a massive 8-foot-high poster for Jack Daniels.
Totally. And this is exactly what I'm saying. I believe that TFL have a responsibility to be consistent in their advertising. So we need to begin somewhere. But these adverts are just not on the tube. They are outside. They are in the station. These adverts are on the buses. It's all of TFL, not just one place. So this is about consistency from the TFL side, and us to be very careful about what we're telling people about their eating habits now. I mean, I fundamentally believe that this is a very, very good move. Otherwise, this obesity crisis is going to increase. We've already doubled. Since 1993, we have doubled in how overweight the UK population is.
But Edward, your advert wasn't saying eat too much cheese, was it?
No, it wasn't. We originally got told the advert would be fine. So 3 or 4 months ago, when this started and our landlords put forward this idea of doing this advert, we were told the advert was going to be all right because it's an advert for workspace. You know, it's an advert for our landlord, really. And as a part of that, we were a part of that advert, and it wasn't advertising cheese. It was advertising a business that sells cheese. And there happened to be a piece of cheese on that advert. So TFL then asked us for the nutritional information on that cheese, which is part of which is an absurd question because there's thousands of varieties of cheese in the world, all have completely different nutritional values. But it comes back to that simplification thing again and a tick box exercise. So we went back with them and said, look, we know full well that this piece of cheese that happens to be on this advert is going to have a higher saturated fat than your threshold. And so then they just said, well, no, I'm sorry, we're going to ban it because it might encourage childhood obesity. So you have an advert for a landlord of which part of it shows a piece of cheese, and that is going to lead to childhood obesity. Whereas you can buy a cheese and onion pasty on TFL land all over the country. So you can eat it, but you can't look at it. So, it just didn't it makes no sense. It is very frustrating that this is where they've decided to start the crusade against childhood obesity is artisan cheese and not Diet Coke, I mean, if this is the starting point, then it's a bit of a worry because we know now that UPFs are far more dangerous than anything because it has some saturated fat. Well,
perhaps children in London eat their own body weight in artisan cheese on a regular basis. I don't know. Edward, look, frustrating, yes. I tell you what, though, it's not bad advertising for Cheese Geek, is it? I mean,
no,
everything's got a silver lining.
Mm.
Yeah, well, I guess you've got to work with the hand you're dealt, but it's on a very it's on a personal level as well. We've got 2 young kids, so we're very, very interested in how to ensure that our kids get good nutrition. And so personally, as parents, as much as me running a cheese business, this kind of misinformation is actually very dangerous because by doing something like this, you're implying that cheese is the enemy. And like I said, we have now shown that cheese has huge benefits across a number of different areas, and health outcomes. So, it's also me as a parent kind of trying to fight this, as well as clearly it's frustrating as a business owner that we weren't able to be kind of showcased on the advert. But yeah, I guess it has led to me being here talking to you this morning.
Absolutely.
So,
Well, thank you for coming on, both of you, very much indeed. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Well, I'd love your thoughts on that. I mean, I have to say, it's not... No food is bad, it's only if you overdo it. That's the point. And who's going to overdo artisan cheese? It's expensive.
Yeah.
Delicious,
Yes.
but expensive. I just think this is... I'm not always totally against the idea that we need to be told or pushed in the right direction, because I think we all do things that we shouldn't do, and sometimes it's good to be given a nudge. But something like that, cheese, pull the other one, frankly.
I think it's really, really ridiculous.
I couldn't manage without a good slice of cheese.
No, I couldn't either. And as I said, the advert wasn't saying eat too much cheese.
No.
It was, I don't know, world gone mad again.
And as I say, if you're going to start on something, start on, booze.
Yeah.
If you want to
Processed
sugar,
foods,
processed food,
fast foods, foods that we know are so high in calories and other things, and yet you still want more.
Yeah, but I tell you what the big difference is. The fast food manufacturers and retailers and your big boozy companies like Jack Daniels and all the rest of it got a lot of
Revenue,
money.
yes.
And they're paying a lot of money
Yeah.
for the massive adverts.